Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the CKF Phillipe Jourget FIF 20, FIF number 20. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank CKF for sending this guy along. They reached out to me and they said, hey Nick, I know that you love the FIF 23. I would really like for you to check out the FIF 20. I think it's going to resolve a lot of your questions. And indeed it did. This was sent to me, and I told them, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be a junk. I sent along my disclaimer, visible on my website. Nevertheless, they sent it along. We have to assume this is the best quality controlled one of these, though, ever. And I'm doing my best not to let that fact affect the nature and quality of my review. But anyways, there we go. Next thing, size comparison. This is actually a reasonably sized knife, unlike the FIF 23, which was friggin' huge. Here we have it against the Spyderco PM2. And so in terms of sharpened blade length, we are very similar to the PM2, maybe a little bit longer. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2, and here it is against, as always, the Spyderco Delica. So we can see here, yeah, it's a reasonably big little knife here. Reasonably big little knife. Wow, go figure, right? So there you go. Next thing, this is a production version of the custom knife, the Phillipe Jourget FIF 20. That is well, it's a beautiful knife, as you can probably already tell. But Phillipe Jourget is sort of so hot right now in terms of makers. Jourget has done a really, really nice job of kind of growing his fan base, and so there's a lot of desire built up for these kinds of things. And CKF had done the 23 last year, which was a much bigger knife to sort of address that, but now they're doing the 20 here. And then finally, what is a CKF anyways? CKF is Custom Knife Factory. This is a company. They are based out of Russia, although I gather some of their machining is done in China. Nonetheless, they have been creating knives for a long time now that are all limited run, unfortunately, but they do some really, really cool work. And so they've been doing a lot of these collaborations with custom makers, and the results have been really excellent. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very nice little knife right here. So on the good side, to start with, it is a reasonable size. In terms of size, we are coming in here just under 3.5 inches, maybe 3.3 or something like that inches. It is at a size range that is, I think, absolutely a great size range for a lot of folks. It's not going to be too big. It's over the 3-inch line, certainly, but it's going to be enough cutting tool for pretty much any task, but not so much as to scare people away. And the lunchroom is the original one, and frankly, it's a good size overall. I mean, in terms of size in the pocket, even though it's a nice big blade, we can see it's actually a little smaller than the PM2. It's a reasonably compact knife, which I appreciate. Next thing, this has lots of little details to it. This is a knife that is really done substantially well. I mean, you can see here that not only does it have a nice backspacer, which is made of zirconium, but you can also see that there is some nice, just the work around the backspacer is very nice. The clip is very nicely done. We'll talk about one issue with it later on, but it's very nicely done. Overall, we've got all these little tiny bits of machining in here that are actually quite nice. And even just, for instance, right here, we've got, you can read right there, M390 and the number of this particular unit. It is just a knife that's got a lot of really nice details. A good logo engraving even, by the way. This is the CKF logo and the Jourget logo, which is one of the prettier logos out there these days. So it just has a lot of really nice details. This really feels a lot like the custom FIF 20, and that is an absolutely gorgeous thing. Next thing, the clip on this guy, with one notable exception, is a pretty good clip. And actually, the knife carries pretty well in the pocket, too. It's got a good profile in the pocket, and as it is a front flipper, it actually, there's no pocket packing or anything like that, so that is a beautiful thing. That works well. Next thing, the action on this guy is spectacular. This is a front flipper pocket knife. The way that this knife is generally meant to deploy, although you can certainly do it two-handedly without any trouble, but the way that it's really meant to deploy is that you place your thumb right up against this little here, and then when you press this way, it pops the blade open as such. So you do this, and the knife flies open. This is an absolutely beautiful action. Then on the close, it's just... Oh, CKF has been dropping these actions lately that are just spectacular. I am so very, very happy to see some of the actions they've been putting down, and so I'm a big fan of that. This has a great action. It has a great detent. It is perfectly dialed in for front flipping such that it reliably deploys, but without any particular concern about detent strength. I can't... Oh, I guess I did shake it loose that time, but look, it's a very, very nice knife. Detent-wise is nailed, and the action is spectacular. Then finally, on the good side, I gotta say, this captures the spirit of the custom very, very, very well. This feels impressively like one of his customs. And honestly, if I didn't look at the back side of this, if I didn't see the CKF, you could hand this to me and say, oh, cool, a Jourget custom. Wow, that must have been really expensive. And well, yeah, it is really expensive, but it's not a Jourget custom. I think it captures the spirit of his work well, and it captures the fact that Jourget, a lot of his work tends to be very low-key, but very well done. I talked in the last joke about it having sort of a big pivot energy, if you will, meaning, he doesn't have to show off in order to show off. It's not flashy, it's not crazy, it's not over the top, but it is damn well executed, and everything about this is really, really well done, and fit and finish-wise, it's absolutely perfect. So, you know what, to me, all of that is the good side, is that it captures the custom well, both in terms of its overall approach, in terms of the details, in terms of all of that. It has a really amazing action here. It's got a great clip, lots of really nice details, and a very reasonable size. On the great side, this blade is freaking great. It has this nice big tall blade here, and this tall blade has a nice, actually almost looks a little hollow, but maybe it's completely flat. Either way, it has a very nice grind that gets to a spectacularly thin edge down at the bottom there, which is just stellar. You can see here, if we look at the tip, yeah, that's thin. This is a very, very nice slicing machine. And it is using M390, which is one of the best steels out there, if not the best steel out there lately. And it has this really nice sort of unidirectional satin finish on it that just gives you a really nice sort of aesthetic to it. I love this blade so much because it makes this knife cut like crazy. This knife is an incredible cutting tool, in addition to being a very, very attractively made object and a really good, I don't want to even say homage necessarily because Jourget's involved, but a really good interpretation, if you will, of the original custom. So to me, at least, though, what is absolutely great about this knife more than anything else is this blade. This is a spectacular cutting tool. Even if the rest of it was a piece of crap, which it isn't, by the way. But so that's what's great. On the bad side, a couple of things to highlight here. It is on the heavier side. I'm not saying it's like, oh my God, heavy, but, keep in mind, 3.3-inch blade here. We're coming in around 4.5 here, 4.6 ounces. That's a fair amount of heft here. I mean, all of these big chunks of zirconium, yeah, they're not going to exactly be super lightweight. And it's also, the balance on this guy is a little bit further back. Balance ends up being about here, whereas, very often I prefer it to be a little closer to where you're grabbing. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely a thing. It's also a relatively thick knife. What we can see here, we put it up next to the PM2. This guy is actually thicker in the pocket than the PM2, so it is a beefy knife. And this is in part due to this big contouring here, which, by the way, makes for a pretty reasonable ergonomics, although there were definitely some hot spots from time to time. This is, nonetheless, it is definitely thick in the hand. And actually, speaking of those hot spots, there are some areas on this guy that could actually be melted a little bit, so to speak. This corner particularly is a little less than comfortable. These little corners right here, and then specifically, this isn't as much of an issue when carrying it, but these little corners right here, I could like to see this guy get a little tiny bit more melting. Each of these little corners made a little bit looser, a little bit more rounded off. Just toss the thing in a tumbler for a little while. I think that would help it a little bit. It's not the end of any worlds particularly, and the blade is actually very nicely crowned with a nice swedge on there and everything. But it is definitely, there are some hot spots, and so when you grip on this guy, you feel a little bit of it, but honestly, it's still pretty ergonomic, and it's still a very, very nice piece there. Next thing, I definitely preferred, the full-size version of this had a polished zirconium area here, and then the carbon fiber on it was a more classical carbon fiber weave, rather than this sort of shredded carbon fiber. Maybe, I don't know if they're calling it marbled or shredded or something, but either way, it's a slightly better sort of thing than that. I like the original appointments on the full size a little bit better, but I like the size so much better here that it's okay. Next thing, out of the box, this guy needed a little bit of adjustment and some thread locker. What I mean by that is that out of the box, this was running a little bit loose in the pivot, and it loosened up a little more over time. So I put it back together. You saw my disassembly video, and since then, it's run just beautifully, but definitely you're going to want to take this guy, at least, if not apart, you're going to want to make sure and thread lock the pivot using a nice gentle thread locker and get that locked in place there. Next thing, price-wise, this is not a cheap knife. We are looking at $580, which, oh boy, that's a high price. Thing is, though, at the end of the day, Jourget Customs are in the $1,300 range table, I believe, and that was in summer of 2019, so who knows where they're at now. this is a pretty damn good deal compared to that, and there's really not that much I can complain about here. I mean, I'm finding things to complain about, but in terms of implementation, really, there were only a couple of little issues here that bugged me, so the price on it is definitely up there, but I really feel like it's actually not a bad price. Would I like to see it cheaper? Yeah, but I'd like to see everything cheaper. Overall, they're not ripping my face off here, but it is just a really high price that's going to put it out of range for a lot of people. Then, finally, on the bad side, if we look at the carbon fiber a little bit closer, and I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit to show this off. But if we look at the carbon fiber a little closer, what we actually see are a fair number of voids. We see a fair number of little areas where the carbon fiber is sort of, I don't want to say chipped away, because I don't think it's an abrasive process or anything like that, but just areas where the carbon fiber isn't even, where it looks like some of the grains have torn out or something like that. Is this a problem? No, not really, but in practice it does actually make the knife feel a little bit less sort of polished than I think it otherwise would have. At some level, I wish this would have been a very nice smooth carbon fiber like we see on a lot of other knives from them, rather than this sort of pitted marbly carbon fiber, which I think just isn't as impressive in terms of materials there. So to me, at least, all that is the bad, is that there is some voids in the carbon fiber, and honestly, I really don't like this pattern of carbon fiber particularly personally. The balance is a little bit far back. The price is definitely up there, even though I don't think it's unfair. Needed some adjustment in thread locker. I preferred the polished zircon, the regular carbon fiber on the full size there. A couple of sharp corners. It's a little thick, and it's on the heavy side. On the ugly front, there are two ugly issues here. The first one is actually the clip here. So if we take a look at the clip there, what you can see here is that the bottom of the clip is very slightly rounded off on the inside there. Didn't come that way from the factory. In fact, I had to take this clip off and using basically a sharpening stone, I needed to take off a little bit of this back edge of the clip right in there, because previously it had just a sharp edge, kind of a 90-degree angle terminator there, that was very, very grabby on the pants. It made this guy very difficult to extract from the pocket. And so just rounding that off a little tiny bit, this was literally something that took me a minute and a half with a sharpening stone. Just rounding that off just a little bit made a world of difference, but that's definitely a little detail that they can't afford to be missing at $500. And so you might have to round off this back corner of the clip there, just so you don't get that really grabby corner. Then, and so that's definitely ugly, but it's an easy fix too. On the very ugly front, this is a limited edition knife. They have put the death number on this guy. This is dead on arrival. CKF has this habit of making all of their knives in such a way that they make a run of them and then they stop and they're done forever. That is really, really bad. And as a result, what that means is good luck finding one. It sucks, and in fact, I've gone on record. This guy came to me before I had sort of sworn off limited editions entirely, and oh man, does this one make that hurt. But it really bothers me. It's like, CKF, stop playing this game. You have made something truly incredible here. Why are you not going to sell enough of them to people? I've heard them comment in other places that they're thinking about making many more of their knives, or maybe dropping that on. I don't know. But I'm just really, really tired of one of the better companies out there working right now, making things in such a way that people can't buy them after 2 or 3 months. The original FIF got real hard to find very, very quickly, and this is going to be no exception. Probably even more so because it's at a size that I think is going to be reasonable for most. And so as a result of this being a limited edition, not only am I very, very sad deep inside my little heart here, but the knife is disqualified from being Knife of the Year, even though it is a very serious contender for that position. So to me, that's what's ugly, is that this is needlessly made as a limited edition rather than an ongoing production knife. Even if they just promised, we'll do another batch if these sell out, perfect, do it. And then there's also a sharp area under the clip that needed to be rounded off for this to be really carryable. So, final conclusions. Look, I entered the Phillipe Jourget lottery at the Blade Show 2019 to win a FIF 20. They had one of these on the table that was a titanium bolster and I think a different carbon fiber, but it was substantially similar to this knife. And in fact, like I said, if somebody handed this to me and said, hey, it's a custom, and I didn't see the CKF logo, I'd believe them. But at the time, I was very sad that I lost that lottery. I was very happy to plunk down $1,300 to walk out of there with a FIF 20. I am no longer sad that I lost that lottery. In fact, I am pretty happy that I lost that lottery because this is just as freaking good. This is 98% of the custom knife for 50% of the price. I mean, certainly, there are some nice areas in the customs, and there's just a slight little bit of going beyond, but oh boy, in the curve of diminishing returns, this one is at a very sweet spot. This is a wonderful thing because it is basically a custom knife, and by the way, CKF, Custom Knife Factory, just saying, but it's basically a custom knife, but it's it's done at a much better price point for a lot of folks, and that's just wonderful. I mean, CKF has really nailed this knife with very nice finishing, very nice details, and amazing action, good build quality, a blade that is just amazing, and a size that is reasonable for a lot of folks. But, yeah, it's got a couple of downsides. It's a little heavy, a little thick, a couple of sharp edges, the matte Zerk, the bad CF, a high price tag, the flawed clip, and the fact that it is dead on arrival is a limited edition. That's really ugly, but honestly, I am impressed. Oh my God, is this knife good. This knife is a very, very easy gem. It is a wonderful piece. It is a very faithful interpretation of the original Jourget piece here. And its two big brother was contender for Knife of the Year, and this too would have easily been a contender as well. This is the same basic idea with the same basic construction and tricks and whatnot, just in a more carryable size. This puts a custom Jourget effectively in the pocket at prices that are on the high end of production, certainly, but that are production prices, and that is absolutely amazing. Honestly, my biggest regret about this knife, as you can imagine, is the limited nature. I mean, like I said, this would be an easy contender for Knife of the Year, but the fact is they're not going to be available at the end of the year, so it's out of the running. But given how good this is, I doubt it's going to be available at the end of the month when this video drops. So I really very much always hope that CKF is just going to drop this limited thing altogether, or at least give the option, say something like, well, we're going to make another batch of them, but these ones are going to have regular carbon fiber or something like that. I mean, just do variants. I mean, heck, I would love to see this with titanium accents instead of Zerk. Not only do I find titanium a little cooler, but anyways, I would love to see more of these guys get out into the community's hands, because I think this is just a spectacular piece, and they could sell a freaking ton of these, but they're, for some stupid reason, refusing to. But look, at the end of the day, all of my rants about the limited editions thing aside, this is magnificent. And even if it is a shooting star, which is glowing brightly as it plunges into its inevitable limited edition demise, it's a damn bright star, and this is a damn good knife, and CKF and Phillipe Jourget should both be proud, because this is really, really, really good. So anyways, there you go. I hope you found this interesting, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day, and I hope you get a fifth of the enjoyment of this knife, as I did. A fifth of the enjoyment that I got out of this knife. Look, it was a bad pun, and I explained it badly, so here you go. Bad, but good. Good. Anyways, hope this has been interesting to you. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.